Volumes 3 through 6 not play quite snappy enough, fast enough, or hard enough? Well, you need to get Lynns-ified.
I need
That was perfect.
as
I
a
actually
ringtone.
switched over for that.
Oh my god.
Yeah. All right, everyone, we are back at Midwest Gaming Classic. We're going to teach you how to upgrade your flippers with flipper rebuilds, why it's important, and then we're going to Lynns-ify a firepower. So I'm going to switch over to Matthew Talley from Lynn's Arcade and Matt Benzick. And they're going to tell us what's going on.
Hello again. We're back. So today we are going to be kind of doing a rebuild, but we kind of fast forward since we're got time cut off. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually upgrade Matt's firepower System 6.
System 6, yep.
Flipper plates up to the new Williams plate. So if you can, I don't know if you can zoom in on this, but you can see these have this like compression spring on them, and then also the plate, the coil stop is actually built into this plate. So when the coil stop wears out and your coil plunger wears out, you actually end up having to replace this whole plate as opposed to just replacing a coil stop. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to reuse the flipper or the coil and the end of stroke and just transfer everything over onto the new Williams plate that we have right here.
And so that would be the Fliptronic era plate.
Era plate, yep.
Nice.
So it has a return spring on it as opposed to a compression spring. So it's a nice, makes your games a lot snappier. You'll be able to hit the shots in this game a lot easier. And it also makes it a bit more
aggressive?
Out of control. Aggressive?
Yeah.
Aggressive is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we will be adding the Lynn's kit, the White Lightning kit.
The 77-Lynns-IFY.
So
5 is for the color white.
aha.
Oh.
And then we have yellow, and we have black. All
Nice.
available on Marco Specialties. So we'll get into this. We'll start taking this guy apart, and yeah, I got Matt over here helping me out. He's going to kind of relay things that I'm saying to y'all, and we'll go.
All right. So the first thing Matthew is going to do is take the flipper out, get the get that whole armature out of the way. Moto's going to get us the in-depth cam going here. So typically, so what Matthew was saying to me is that before I brought it to the show, I actually rebuilt these flippers with the original System 6 hardware. So the end of stroke switches are new. So in this case, if your end of stroke switches are in good condition or have been replaced, this is a really easy drop-in replacement as long as your wires are long enough. So once we get to that step, we'll talk about that more, but if your game's set up right, this is a no solder modification for your machine. And of course, like typical old operator games, there is 3 different types of hardware holding this flipper plate in. We have one that's a small flathead, one that's a large flathead, and one that's a Phillips. So we do recommend when you put your flippers back together, if you have 3 different hardwares that look like, you know, someone just grabbed the bottom of the parts bin and threw screws in there, replace them with all one. Makes it easier next time you have to work on it. And that goes for any mech when you're working on these machines. So you see here he's taking the end of stroke switch off right now. Again, the coil and the end of stroke switch are going to be put on the new mech, and while we're getting everything set up, those are just going to be dangling. If you're worried about the solder joints or anything, you can zip tie those up to the wiring loom to get them out of the way, and make sure you're not stressing any of those connections. But make sure that you do check your solder points. That's a high vibration component, and make sure you don't have any cracks in the solder or anything going wrong there, because that's going to affect your flipper performance. So the part Matthew is showing you there, the backing plate to the end of stroke switch, you need to make sure that you don't lose that. That is a very easy part to lose in a wiring loom because it doesn't have a lot of weight, and it's the sort of part that you forget to order and you drop it midway through the service, and then you're spending an hour trying to find a small piece of black metal. And Matthew, is that something that, like, in your tech kit at Lynn's, do you have, like, those sort of parts? Do you just have a couple on hand to save time? Yeah. So anytime, again, you're ordering parts, anything you feel you could drop really easily, when you're going through your shopping cart, think about things you can drop easily and, add a spare so that, if you do drop something and you can't find it, you don't have to wait to, make another order, ship another order. You get your machine back up and running in really quick time. So you can see the coil's just going to be balanced up there, and now the System 6 plate is out. And I think these... So you can see how loose that coil stop is. And that's what Matthew's saying, that coil stop starts to get loose. It's going to damage your plunger. Once it starts damaging the plunger, the two are just going to wear. You're going to tear up coil sleeves. You're going to have lockup. Going to burn up coils. And if that does break and separates, you're replacing the whole plate. Whereas on the Fliptronic era boards, you can just replace that end stop. And I think these are actually, I think System 9 started using those, because I think my space shuttle has that, that style end stop. So I think it's System 9 through Fliptronic all have the same mechanic. Check. I heard something. So right now, Matthew's got the plate out. Now he's going to start taking apart the new mech. So in this case, we're not going to, like we said, we're not going to reuse we're not going to use the coil or the end of stroke. Now in this case, these are parts that I would put in my spares box. Get yourself a Plano case and, throw an extra, coil, a couple extra switches. Anytime I'm rebuilding pop bumpers, I buy a couple extra skirts. I buy a couple extra spoons and just have them on so that when my game breaks in the middle of, my Memorial Day party, I can have it back up and running in a little bit. I don't have to worry about, downtime. So end of stroke switch is off. We're pulling off the end plate.
Tell them about the magnet bowl trick.
Oh, the magnet bowl trick. So in a bind, you can use the speaker as a magnetic tray to hold all of your hardware, screws. If you're using like a multi-bit tool, you can hold them there. Also, if you drop anything in the machine, the first place to look is the magnet of the speaker. If something bounces off out of the play field, if you hear it hit a couple light things and then like a solid, metal noise, it's on the speaker. That's where you need to look. Once you drop a couple things in a machine, you'll know the difference of did it actually hit the pegboard bottom of the cab, or did it hit the speaker, or did it get caught in the playfield somewhere? So now what Matthew's doing right now is he's getting the retract spring connected to the end of stroke post, because it's a lot easier to do when it's not mounted to the playfield. And even then, it is still a pain, but it is a small price to pay to have snappier, more powerful flippers on these era games. And also more serviceable. That's the other thing. It's a lot easier to pull this mech apart now with that coil stop assembly. Yep. What's that? Oh, yeah. So before he puts together before he mounts the plate, he's also going to mount that end of stroke switch, because again, that's one of those components that is easier to mount when it is out and you can actually, maneuver the whole plate. Because if you look on this firepower, we've got this lighting post here that is right where the flatheads that mount that end of stroke switch are on. And so unless you have the tightest right angle screwdriver that is flathead, it's going to be really a challenge to get that back on there. So, make it easier on yourself, plan ahead, look at the things that are going to be hard to put back together. Just try to make it as easy as possible for yourself.
Yeah.
So he's getting that connected up. He's using a screwdriver as a fake flipper bat just to make sure that everything's aligned right, that the motion of the mech is correct before he mounts it to the playfield. Those sort of little checks make it a lot easier to service games, because again, you don't want to get 3 steps down the road, you go to put the flipper in, something isn't aligned right, you have to take 5 things off the machine again. So, and these are the sort of things that we learned the hard way so that you guys don't have to.
Uniform, not the live one.
Oh, I didn't mean to.
And Matthew, what is the recommended screw to mount those? Like it's like a number 8 or a number 6 flathead or panhead. Quarter. Okay. So what Matthew's saying is, so when he does this, he usually switches over to a 1/4-inch hex head style screw, so that all of his games can be serviced with a 1/4-inch nut driver. In this case, we're using number 6 panheads, which are throughout this game. Kind of whatever works with your workflow. Choose that, but again, try to make sure that if you get a game that came off route in the 70s, 80s that has 10 different fasteners on a mech, try to unify it, because in the moment you don't want to be carrying 10 tools to take out a coil. You want to have 2 tools. So right now, he is finding a sin that I committed, I had a coil stop get jammed, so we might have to replace that one's coil, unfortunately.
So getting a little trick to getting a stuck sleeve out is I use a different sleeve at the bottom, push it to force this guy out to where I can actually grab it and then pull this out. And the reason I'm switching this is what I want to do is you see where this coil has the lugs on the stop side. So every time you flip, that's going to slam into that coil and you might end up breaking your solder. So what I'm going to try to do, this one actually has enough room that I can flip it around and have it so the coil stop or the lug side is on the coil, the plunger side, and moved away from the coil stop. That way these will stay solid longer. I have barely enough wire room to do it. So I had to pull your old sleeve out. Might as well put a new sleeve in to flip it around.
Yeah, it may be the right flipper that has the worst of the two sleeves. One of them came out, the edge of it came out in pieces, and I think that coil got way overheated at one point.
If you look at your end-of-stroke switch, when you close it, it's not actually opening. So that's what's going to make your coil heat up. It's going to stay on high power the whole time.
This is what's good about having friends that are fantastic techs. They look at your work and go, hey man, you got close, but let's make this right. So right now he's just getting the hex screws in on the end of the coil. Make sure the coil's, held tightly so there isn't any vibration. Again, if that coil moves when you hit the power stroke, if that coil moves, that movement is not being, that's force that isn't getting pushed to your flippers. That's going to make your flippers feel kind of fluttery, and it's going to, they're going to have more play. They're going to bounce more. It's not going to play how you expect it, and it's not going to be solid. So, make sure, that is all, correct and tight. Now he's getting the flipper bat threaded through.
Is that a lightning flipper bat?
I believe it is.
I'm creating a cardinal sin amongst a lot of people's opinions, but yes.
I know. Can you show why you would switch to a lightning flipper even though this original game just used the basic flippers?
So what is the difference between the two? So so basically the lightning flipper is from the center line of the pivot point to the end of the flipper is a 1/16 inch shorter. So that means the gap between them at their closest point is now going to be an 1/8 of an inch wider. 1/8 of an inch doesn't sound like much until you have a straight down the middle and you have lightning flippers, and then you go, this is why I don't put lightning flippers on things. But it's a lot of fun, so it's why we do it. So what he's doing right there is just opening up the crank a little bit more. Some of them are a little tight at first. Get it opened up so that the flipper bat can get through there cleanly. Lay it. Mm-hmm. I mean, anything in that mechanic, if you have, let's say, in this case, I had a coil get a little too hot. When something gets hot, it's going to expand. All those windings, depending on how hot it got, that coil can bulge out. Now you've got more resistance, you've got more pushing in on the coil sleeve that's starting to grab that plunger. Also, if the bushing is starting to wear out, if the flipper isn't set up right. If you go by the Marco booth, you'll notice we have those little pieces of plastic that say, Marco Pinball, everything Pinball. Those are to set the gap between the flipper's base and the bushing, because there's a set height that needs to be for that mechanism to cleanly move. If you have it tightened down too much, now the flipper, that coil is not only working against the spring, but it's working against the tightness in that bushing, and now the actual crank armature might not be centered in the coil. Like, there's a lot of little things that can cause that. So for anyone on stream that didn't hear that question, one of the gentlemen in the crowd was asking, what causes my flippers to stick up? I'm playing for a while, I have a good game, and then all of a sudden I let go of the flipper button, my flipper stays up, and then a ball hits it, it falls back down, and I get maybe 5 or 6 more flips before it does it again. Our advice would be, get your play field up, and manually move your flippers by hand, and feel, if it's something in the like the plunger or the coil sleeve, you're going to feel that resistance. And if you can feel resistance when it's cold, that's the time to go, all right, I need to go to Marco Specialties. I need to get the Fliptronic upgrade. I'm going to get some lightning flippers too, and, rebuild that to get rid of that problem. So now we're moving on to the other, the right side. This side is probably going to be where Matthew's going to find the sin of the absolutely trashed coil sleeve. This side we thought was going to be the easier side, because the left side actually had a really short amount of wire between the end of stroke switch and the coil lugs. We ended up having enough room to not have to solder. If that wire was too short, all we'd have to do is desolder that wire and add a new wire between the end of stroke switch and the power lug. The harness going to the coil is always going to have enough length. The harness going to the end of stroke switch should always have that much length. It's just that one little bit from the end of stroke into the coil. And the reason we do that again is if you didn't hear when Matthew said it, we want the lugs to be away from the coil stop, because when that plunger hits that coil stop, all of that vibration is right at the end of that unit. Vibration cracks solder. Cracked solder means we're not transmitting power, our flippers get weaker, our game doesn't play as well. So if we can rotate that coil around and get those lugs away from that end stop, it lowers the vibration on those and just extends the life of our machines. Because we love working on pinball machines, but we love playing pinball more than we love working on them. So,
That's not true.
That's true. Some of us love working on pinball machines more, but I really like playing. What's that? Yeah, and making. Yes, I do enjoy making pinball machines.
Does it all.
I need to get back to mine. The MGC is inspiring me to.
All right, look what he's doing with this spring. Put the mic up to Matthew, and this is like his big thing about exactly what happened with that spring on why he wants to switch them to these Fliptronic flippers.
So yeah, it ends up getting wound up inside the coil, and you're losing action at that point. So it ends up getting stuck. Drop the screw. Ends up getting stuck in there. So I'm just removing that from the equation and adding this nice return spring.
Oh.
So it ends up being snappier, and you get faster gameplay, and it's a lot more resilient. Oh my God. Bro.
I know. I didn't have a coil. I just... Yeah, it was shot. It locked on.
He just said bro. But yeah, that
Yeah.
that spring, that conical spring being stuck in there was like a perfect example, perfect shot of why you want to replace those.
Yeah, like if you've
It
ever...
was so wedged in there.
Yeah, if you've ever seen like a what's it called? Like your shooter rod spring, that it gets like full, like it jumps a coil. That's basically what can happen on this, but it actually makes its way in between the plunger and your coil sleeve, and then again starts making more resistance that your flippers may stick up. Switching to that, System 9 Fliptronic style return spring takes it completely out of the equation and makes it just much more reliable. You also don't have the I wish I had the original cranks that were on this machine, but the piece of backlight between the plunger and the armature, that return spring can kind of start to machine a pocket into it, which as that spring expands, you're losing spring strength. It's taking longer for that spring to compress. Now your flipper plays differently, and again, it's slight little changes that make your game not play as well, and then you're not going to like your game as much because it's like, man, I can't get it up that ramp, or I can't hit that shot reliably, and all it is just a spring or something. Yeah, yeah. And he just looked at me and went, "It's bad." And tricks like that are, one of the greatest benefits of talking to people like Marco Specialties. We have people on the phones able to help you out with tech problems. Your game's doing something weird. We want to sell you parts. We also want to sell you the right parts and get your games running, keep your games running, and get it so if you have one game, we want you to have 3 games. We want to promote the hobby and the community. So, that is something that, we have people like Matthew on the phone lines being able to walk you through those sort of problems to make sure that, you get the right part that you need for your machine. How far back do we go? I bought a part last week for my Sagasi Sonic Prospector that's on the floor out here. Serene, what do you think the oldest part that Marco supports is? Like, as far, 40s?
40s? Yeah, we could have some parts that would work on flipperless games.
Yeah. So, it depends, it really depends on the reuse, but well into early EMs, we have components, then you should be on our website. It's, be it. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, so right now, Matthew's working on getting the engine stroke switches set up. Yep. So, and the trigger on the same side. So basically, again, having friends that are great techs, they look at the work I did and went, you got close, man. So when I put this game together, on Firepower, it has lane change. you hit the right flipper, the fire targets at the top will, index over, just like, all of our modern machines. That switch is on the flipper mech. It's not on the flipper button. And so on the right side, you have two switch stacks. You have the high-powered end of stroke and the actual CPU lane change switch. When I had assembled it, I assembled it wrong, and that I had put both switch stacks together on one side of the end of stroke post. So that made it so it limited the travel that I could have with the switch stacks, because they were, the low power switch stacks were resisting the flipper harder, and so I wasn't getting as much power out of my flipper. Matthew switched it around so that the in the correct format, which is putting the end of stroke on the inside and the CPU on the outside, so that they can work together better and provide a better flipper feel, more power, and just a better playing game.
Again, this is much easier if you do actually unsolder all your stuff, because then you can work on all this like on a bench. So you're not having to like get up in here and stand on your toes. If you mark all your wires, unsolder it, put it on a bench, and then you can put everything together, put it back in there, and then solder everything back on. I'm trying to do a kind of a quick version.
Yeah, so if you're not comfortable with soldering, practice on coils, because you can put a lot of heat into them, and you're, as long as you don't just hold the soldering iron on it for minutes on end, you're probably going to be okay. But it's good practice. Tips on soldering. A good clean iron. Good solder. I do board work in my spare time, so I'm soldering on the PCB board. So I usually make sure I have paste flux to just keep all of my contacts clean. But a good iron, and just take your time, and make sure you have do it in a well ventilated room. Don't be breathing those fumes. Yeah, and don't rush it. One thing, if you're a tech that's working on older games and newer games, if you go to use solder that you use on an older game and go to use it on a newer game, and it's kind of balling up and acting weird, that's because modern games are soldered with lead-free. So if you use leaded solder or like a tin lead solder, those may not mix well. So if you have you're soldering and it's just not working, or you take the iron off and it feels like the component keeps moving and the solder cools down and looks like rough, that's not how it's supposed to look. It should be nice and smooth and shiny. And so if you see it looking really rough, that's a bad solder joint. You have contamination or incompatible solders. That's the sort of thing of like, look for those little things, and that'll help you out a bunch. I personally use like the Weller little soldering station. I think it's like a 35 watt or something.
Hako makes a really great soldering station too.
Yeah, Hako is a fantastic soldering company. I have their desoldering gun for board work.
Yeah.
It is, I won't say it is a must-have because it's a very expensive piece of equipment, but if you're going to be doing board work, if you overheat a pad and like delaminate it, it costs more than a Hako to fix it. So, all right, where are we at, Matthew? So, even though Matthew's really tall, this game's taller, and so he has to get up much higher up to be able to see over the wiring looms. And again, this is where if you're somewhat comfortable with soldering, It's actually easier to build this out on the bench, have everything ready to go. You know, the power lug from the end of stroke switch onto the coil, and you know, all of that set up. Get it onto the play field, and then just make a couple solder connections. But we didn't want to solder today because we didn't want you guys to judge our soldering skills. So. And knowing our luck, I'd be like holding something below and get a blob of solder on my hand, and you know, I'd be crying and it'd just be sad. Like, yeah. Oh yeah, I have plenty of shoes that have solder holes in them. Yeah.
Just as long as the solder doesn't drop somewhere arbitrarily in the game, and then you're like, why do I have a short somewhere?
Yes.
A little blob on some other metal piece. You're like, no, where did it go?
And that's a great tech tip of like when you're working on your game. If you are soldering, you know, pay attention when you're soldering. If you're using a lot of solder and you see something drip down, before you power up your game, you need to look vertically below and go, did that solder hit something important? Because you know that hot piece of metal came down and landed on something. So, you know, if it dead shorted a diode or something below, that's gonna mess up your lamp matrix. That's gonna affect your switch matrix. It might not actually do damage, but you're gonna start looking like, my game didn't have a lamp issue. Why does my game now have a lamp issue?
Yeah. Another good tip is if you are having to solder when the play field's vertical up like that, right underneath it, put a microfiber cloth or something under so it can catch that for you.
Absolutely. So we're at the point where, Matthew's got his screwdriver holding the crank armature in place so that spring doesn't come undone while he gets the mounting plate in place. Those are those little tips that, you find out from dropping the armature out of the machine a couple of times. Yeah, you spent 5 minutes getting the spring connected, and then the armature falls off, the spring falls off, and then you got to redo it all. So, little tricks that can save you a lot of time. And the nice thing about this upgrade is though the top side of the mounting plate changed, the actual mounting base of the Williams mech doesn't. So the 3 through 6, 9 Fliptronic, that mounting pattern of the screws in relation to this the actual bushing of the flipper doesn't change. So we don't have to worry about, is there a light in the way that, we're going to have to, change something. We can just drop it in and make it happen. Did we lose a screw? So now we get to play everyone's favorite game, where... Oh, found it. Right here. So, we joke about, like, when you drop a screw, the first thing, guys like Matthew and I will do is we'll look at the bottom of the cab and then listen. Because you'll hear the screw hit things on the way down. And if you hear it hit a piece of metal and then it doesn't make another noise, that probably means it got caught on, maybe like a pop bumper mount, or, like a switch or an insert or something, that it hit it and then, lodged itself, or it got caught in a wire loom. If you hear it make a couple of tinks and then, like a really kind of like pegboard noise, the screw made it down to the bottom of the cab. Just like when you drop a wrench when you're working on a car, you're listening for that socket to hit concrete. And when it doesn't, you get really sad because you have to now find it in the the weather shielding of your Toyota Prius. What's that? Nice. So we had barely enough wire to be able to make this upgrade work with being solderless. So, and then Matthew, what for techs working on their games, what gauge wire should they have a length of when they're working on a game of for these sort of jumpers 18 gauge or something around there? Okay. Yeah, so right around an 18 to 16 gauge wire. It's good to have a small length of. We're not rewiring the whole machine. We don't need spools and spools of wire, but these pieces of wire from your end of stroke switches to your coils, those sort of wires that they get a lot of stress from moving around and getting vibrated, shaken up. That it's good to just, if it looks like the wire's beat up, just replace it. And it's a real quick thing. And again, 5 minutes now gets us much more reliability down the road and prevents us from having to open up our game, in 2 months because a solder joint cracked or a wire broke. So preventative maintenance. So what inspired you, Matthew, to start doing lightning flippers? What was the start of that trend for you guys over at Lynns?
Hold the mic closer to his face, please.
I think it was just to kind of get games to our game times. We wanted to speed up our tournaments stuff. So we wanted tournaments to go by quicker. Doing lightning flippers just adds that little bit to mess with people, because they're gauging their shots off of the length of the flipper. And so by taking away that little 1/16 of an inch, it changes all your shots just a little bit. The center drain is kind of, an 1/8 of an inch down the middle is not that big a deal, but it's really it changes your shots a lot. And a lot of the time it ends up being snappier, and you can backhand shots differently, and your lane shots on the outsides is a little bit harder, and so it just kind of messes with people's heads just a little bit. And I can't remember the first game we put them on. I want to say it was our Sega Godzilla, I think was the first one that we did it to.
So this is basically going to make getting extra balls on this machine much harder, because you have to wing it off the flipper to get that last blue target. So this game's gonna be mean in Emoto's Wacky Wild MGC tournament, patent pending. So right now he's just checking to make sure everything going through the play field feels right. There's nothing messed up there. And so now he's checking, getting the flipper bat spaced off of the play field correctly, so that we can get to the point where we start tightening down the crank armature.
Little tip I do is I just kind of get it just tight, where you can kind of feel that it's going to move the arm and the flipper on the other side, but it's not so tight that you can't adjust it. But it makes it so if I get it into a spot that I want to tighten it down at, it can stay there. And I can kind of test the flipper at the same time.
Yeah, so when you're setting this up, you're going to be having the play field up, having the play field down. And if you don't have enough tension on that, you're going to have them set up exactly how you want it. lift the play field up, go to tighten them down, bring it back down, and both your flippers are pointed straight up. And it's like, nope, that's not what we need. So you want to have them tight enough that you can, they're holding position, but that you can still, make sure that the flipper is the top face of the flipper is parallel with your in lane, so that you don't have, you have the full stroke of the flipper and everything, lines up as it should. All right. What's that?
So yeah, now what I'm doing, like when I put them together underneath the play field, I made sure that they were like kind of smashed together. Now I'm going to wiggle this armature and pull at the same time, creating a little gap. Then I'm going to put my spacer underneath, push the flipper down, and when I reach up underneath, I'm going to grab it and like push the two things together.
Oh no, tested by number 31 on the floor. So,
now that I have my flipper gauge tool in there, I'm pushing it down, flip the flipper down onto the playfield. And I'm going to wiggle this until, wiggle the flipper back and make sure I'm pushing up on the armature to hit up against that bushing. Then once I get it aligned, I'll tighten it down and then pull my spacer out, and I'll have the exact amount of space and play that we need.
yeah, so when these mechs are designed, there is a prescribed amount of slop that needs to be in the verticality of that flipper. That if you have everything smashed down without a spacer, your armature, your crank is going to have to crank against that flipper being pushed all together. So we have that shim in there so that we can tighten it up. So when we pull that shim out, we have the correct amount of gap, that everything is centered up, ready to go, and it's going to play for a long time reliably, and we're not going to have to, keep adjusting small things. What's that?
That one's going to need some adjusting. It's a little tight.
Yeah, so if you see on the small bottom right, as Matthew's adjusting it, there we go. Sorry, we keep rotating it. Yeah. So basically right now Matthew's working on the left side, because as he got it tightened down, the mech kind of locked up, that it had a lot of resistance, that it wasn't snapping back. This modification is meant to make those flippers be able to snap back really cleanly and really reliably. And what he was seeing is that there was some resistance. It wasn't as snappy, and so now we need to check the alignment of everything and make sure there's nothing rubbing, dragging, or any sort of issues there. You think it's in the coil sleeve, or the coil sleeve, or?
super tight.
Here, why don't I hold this? We throw that sleeve in the new coil and see how it moves. Because that might just be, hey, we got to replace the coil. Pull that up out of the way. And Matthew, when you're reinstalling these, like, how much resistance are you expecting from the, like, inserting the coil sleeve into that coil? And, like, when do you go, like, hey, this seems like too much resistance, you know, I should probably replace this coil?
You want it to just kind of fall right in there. You don't want it to stick, or you don't want it to, like, have to force it, really. This is funky.
So it's looking like this one's probably a candidate for just a new coil, and we're just going to solder it in backstage or something.
I bet we could find that coil at Rob Anthony's Pinball Classics booth. That's at the front of the house here. Oh,
Comes
it's
with
the
the
exact
Mac.
same one?
Oh, it isn't?
I don't think it's...
Oh, it isn't.
Nah. Because
Yeah.
remember, you're upgrading...
Yeah.
You're upgrading to a whole new type of flipper mech that wasn't necessarily designed for this era of Williams games.
So, so we just put we tried with the new coil, like a brand new coil and sleeve, and there was still resistance. So that tells us it's something else. You know, something in alignment or... Yeah. So, and this is one of those things of, like, when, you know, the gentleman had the question about soldering, and, you know, Matthew says, like, take your time. This is one of those things that all of these, you know, assemblies, as you mount them, alignment is key. Any sort of misalignment is going to cause, you know, rubbing, drag. Take the time, like, if something doesn't feel right, take the time to figure out, you know, make little micro adjustments to make it right. Because if you don't, it's going to end up not playing well. It's probably going to wear in a way that you're not expecting, or way too fast. You know, you'll do a flipper rebuild, but then the plunger's dragging on the coil sleeve and starts gumming up. You're going to have to pull apart that mech a lot sooner than you're expecting. And it's because of those small little adjustments that, you know, you have to make. All right, so did you just adjust the... Okay, so the spacing on the bushing to the flipper bat? So in this case, it ended up... It ended up being the spacing between the flipper bat. You know, possibly we didn't have our shim properly, you know, against the right surfaces. So when we clamped everything down, we were taking out that slack. So that's a perfect example of, like, if you don't use that shim, what's going to happen to your game, and, you know, what sort of problem you're going to see. Because if we just assembled it, yeah, our flipper would still work. It would probably, you know, we would flip the right flipper and it would launch the ball up into the, you know, up into the upper lock, no problem. But then the right flipper can barely get to the lock shot, or the left flipper can barely get to the lock shot. And, you know, those are the sort of things of, the left and right are the same mech. You know, functionally they're doing the same thing. They should feel the same. If you're feeling differences, that's telling you, you know, the mechanics are telling you, something needs to be tuned. Something's a little off. Maybe an end of stroke, maybe an actual mechanical component. But, you know, pay attention to those little details in your game. All right, now we're up. Now we're getting to the fun part, where we get to actually get the flipper rubbers on. Ooh.
What I've done is I've tightened them down, but not to the point where they're completely stuck. They are going to hold their position on the up down and hold it enough, but I can actually still twist them a little bit inside the crank. That way I can line them up. Once I get them lined up, I'll tighten them down as tight as I can.
And so as you're seeing him adjust, so when he was throwing the ball through the left in lane guide, you were seeing the ball kind of hop over the flipper a little bit. Generally, that's not what you want. However, if you look at the in lane guide where Matthew's finger was, that in lane guide's seen much better days. You know, that's seen years of routing and has worn itself down. So, you know, that would be a candidate for replacement, because if the ball is, you know, coming down the in lane and jumps over the flipper, you're not able to time your shots correctly unless you're cradling each time. So you can't like wing a shot off of the in lane and, you know, get that, you know, speed from that. So typically you want those to move cleanly. If you see ball hop, you need to, you know, again, check the alignment of everything. Make sure that, you know, your in-lane guides are set in the correct positions. Make sure, you know, all of your flipper components are, you know, positioned right. Make sure your bushings are tight in the actual, the flipper base. And, you know, that'll improve the performance of your game. And frankly, it'll make you a better player too, because, you know, if you're playing off a machine that is, you know, unpredictable, you're never actually learning the timings and understanding, you know, how to, you know, aim quickly. If you're having to, like, you know, always correct and just wing it, you know, that's the difference. You know, there's always a benefit of playing different games to, you know, be plastic about it, but in this case, there's a mechanical problem. You don't want to learn to that. But if you're wanting to buy this game, it's perfectly good. Everything's wonderful about it. You know, don't worry about the end lane. It's a feature, not a fault.
Well played. Well played.
So that's a Lynns-ify level 2. Nothing but ball hop. So right now, Matthew's under the playfield, like cranking down those armatures onto the flipper bat, so that there is no motion. You know, I talked about it earlier. Of one of the other benefits of this upgraded plate is, you know, if that coil is moving at all with the, you know, the non-solid end stop, you can get everything tightened up so that there is no motion of that coil. If there's no motion of that coil, all of that energy is getting pushed onto the flipper. If we have any, you know, looseness in that that crank, it's eventually going to start slipping. So, you know, your flippers are going to move their home position. Also, it's probably going to start dragging. It's not going to play as constant, and, you know, it's just not going to be a fun time. So should we get this thing plugged in? Watch, we paid for prospector working by firepower dying. That would be so sad. What's that?
Something we do before we actually flip it is you check your end of strokes. Always.
So we're going to check the end of stroke switches to make sure that when the flipper flips, it doesn't lock the power stage on. So for those of us that don't know how the Williams flippers work, you have high-powered switches out at the flipper buttons. That energizes the power coil through the end of stroke switch. When that flipper gets to the end of stroke, it opens up. When that opens up, it cuts power to the high power side of the coil and then lets the low power side of the coil hold on. That's how, oops, sorry, I'm out of. That's how we keep the coils from, overheating, melting down, because the low power side of the coil has a different winding, a different internal resistance that it's not going to, overheat like the power side will. Anytime you're flipping a game, if you hold the switch and you hear a really loud buzzing or humming and see the lights in the game kind of drop a little bit, that is the signal to let go of that flipper button and ask whoever owns the machine that they might want to check those switches. Don't continue to hold it because you had a really good ball going. Don't go, I'll keep playing it, I just won't hold the flippers. Because eventually you're going to hold the flipper, you're going to burn out the coil, and your friend that owns the machine is going to be very upset at you, and you're probably going to make a visit over to Marco Specialties to order him a new coil that you just burned out. Or get him a gift card. We do gift cards, right?
It's a sensitive subject.
Something to make sure, too, when you're rebuilding them, some of these are going to be normally closed, and some of these will be normally open. These are normally closed switches, so that means the high power is going to be available when the switch is closed. As soon as you open it, it changes it to low power and hold power. If this switch isn't closed, your flipper is not going to fire at all. If this is open when it's supposed to be closed, it just won't go. So that's kind of one little tip.
So is there an era where they switched from normally closed to normally open end of strokes?
Stern uses normally open now, I believe, and they close. So
yeah, so that would be for your more modern computer controlled games that don't have the in this one the high power is going through that switch. So now we can, God, this is such a pretty game. I don't want to sell. Those are snappy. So Matthew, you were just checking there that you hit the flipper up and then you pushed down on it. What you were checking to make sure like the end of stroke switch was active and not like, or was deactive and not like re-triggering at the end of the.
Trying to like push down on it and make sure it's not going to have any chatter. So everything's holding strong.
And the chatter would come from it re-triggering the end of stroke switch, firing the high-powered side, and basically bouncing between those two states. Oh yeah, man. This is bad that I brought this game out here to do this on, because now I don't want to sell it.
Don't do it. Again, we're going to have this at the official Midwest Gaming Classic after party to play the Lynns-ifying game challenge. Whoever has the high score on this game It starts at 9, and whoever has a high score by 11 p.m. will win a pair of Six Flags tickets. That's good for any Six Flags across the country. So we'll have 6 different games, and we're giving away 12 tickets.
Nice.
And you just have to get on the high score and do some weird, quirky obstacle.
Your tournament last year was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
It was
inspired by Jay Brand's Pinball Olympics.
Yeah.
Which, if anyone hasn't been to that event, it's usually around the time of Pinball Expo, and it's something you don't want to miss.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They sell out quickly.
So we're going to wrap this up. We're going to bring on, coming up next, he's going to show us how to rebuild a score unit on an electromechanical game. But first, before we officially end this stream and go to the next one, Matthew, looking at this game, what else would you do to this to Lynns-ify it?
I would probably take this post out. And then I'd make it steeper for sure. And I would put super bands everywhere.
To make it like the most rejecty, like
So
if you
it's like,
mess up.
All right, everybody. We are here with Mark's Basement, and he's going to do an awesome how to rebuild a score reel
Yes, how to rebuild score reels.
demonstration for us. So thank you so much, Mark, for joining us.
Thanks you for having me.
Yeah, and take it away.
All right, I'm Mark from Mark's Basement Arcade. Today, I have 3 different score reels. I got the easiest one ever to rebuild, which is the Williams score reel. These are really super easy. A little bit harder are the Gottliebs. These, I think they built them originally to make pinball techs mad, because these are not the best score reels to rebuild. They are way overbuilt, and they're just really complicated. But they're fun when they work. And then I got the infamous Chicago coin score reel. As you can see, this thing is sticky. It's sticky and it doesn't want to do its job. So I think we're going to do the Chicago coin first. Everybody hates these. I don't mind them. I had to rebuild about 20 on one machine, so I got very used to building them. So my first thing you need to do is you need to get out your camera and take pictures. I don't care how many times you've rebuilt these. You need pictures to guide you, because if you don't get it done right away and you have to leave, I have done that before, you can't rely on your memory anymore, and you need to rely on your pictures. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these screws out. There's just 3 screws here. I'd like to do the Chicago coin because, like I said, most people hate these because they're just hard to tune in and get to work properly. I won't be cleaning any of the score reels. That takes a lot of time. Now we'll get these springs off. I'm going to take a picture of the springs. Since we got 2 totally different springs. We had a real nice high tension one and then a real loose tension one. Next is we're going to take this clip off. These are E-clips. This arm will come off, which I can feel sticky already. And then we're going to take these 2 screws off here. Just to get this all apart. And then we got the 1 screw in the back. And there's a spring here with a big clip, which I'm going to use my little grabber thingy. I think they're called forceps. I totally forgot about this spring back here. These never want to come out. That's it. It's basically disassembled. However, we need to get the coil out too. So we got to put a brand new coil sleeve in. And the thing that was about Chicago coin, they had to be different with their coils. They use a bigger coil than anybody else does. And the problem with that is nobody makes a new foil sleeve for these. So you gotta kind of cut your own. I'm gonna show you how to do that too. There we go. If it wants to come out. We are not getting that one out. I want to season there real good. So when that happens, I normally have tools at home where I can pound these out. This one I can't get out, but I'm going to show you how to make a new foil sleeve for it. This is like a coil sleeve for like a Williams stepper. I'm going to cut it down to make it fit. As you can see, a regular coil sleeve, like for the Williams and Gottlieb, they're smaller. And they really don't fit, they're too short. But we will cut one to make fit. This is the regular pipe cutter. And this is a plunger out of a Williams Grand Prix that I used to have. So I'm going to kind of measure exactly how long it is. I'll make that groove on there. What this plunger does, it keeps my pipe cutter from crushing the sleeve. This will give you the best cut for cutting your own coil sleeves. There we go. Now we got a perfect cut on this coil sleeve. And as you can see, it is now the exact length it needs to be for a Chicago coin coil. If I could have got this coil sleeve out, we would be putting that one in there. But since, let's pretend we replaced it. We'll get that back on there. Because these are all parts that I have for like spares. So I didn't want to take any of these apart to like cheat. So you guys can see actually how in real world these work. But I also didn't think that the sleeve would have been like stuck in it. So I should have brought my other tools to get that coil sleeve out. However, I do show how to do that at Mark's Basement Arcade, where you can get a full rebuild on all this stuff that I'm doing now. And we'll put the new coil back on there with its new coil sleeve. I can line up the hole. There we go. Now with these Chicago coin, the parts for these are very hard to find. A lot of people didn't like these machines, so they parted them out. And there's very few good examples left in existence. So now I'm gonna take my buzzer. This is just a cheap Harbor Freight Dremel, but it's got a real Dremel 443 bit in it. And I'm just gonna clean the contact on here. That's it, gets a nice polish on that. I will take this plunger. We will get that nice and polished and clean. Hoping it's going to slide in here good. Oh yeah. I will clean all this stuff off. This is just naphtha. You want to get all these parts clean, free of dirt, and especially free of the old grease somebody probably put on it. Because that's your biggest enemy why these don't work. There's that old-fashioned grease. It's got a lot of paraffin in it, and it turns into wax basically, which solidifies on these and makes them not work. Normally with these, I just throw them in an ultrasonic cleaner, and that gets them nice and clean again. And then that's about it, usually. They work perfect after that. But yeah, the hardest thing is cleaning. Clean, clean, clean. Now, I take all these completely apart like this for one big reason. It's to make them work reliably. You can do a partial rebuild on these and get your square reels to work, but I want to rebuild them to the point where you don't have to touch your machine. Your machine is good for years. You never have to open it up and work on it again. The only way to do that is to fully tear these apart and clean them really super, super good. I forgot my Q-tips. I gotta kind of cheat to clean out the middle with this by using that post. This one's gonna be a fun one to clean. This is where you need your cousin's toothbrush. Your favorite cousins. Like I said, if I had this...
What's that liquid you put on it?
That is naphtha.
Oh, nice.
It's just regular naphtha. Some states ban it. And I've heard you could use lighter fluid. Will do the same job. But I like naphtha. And the reason why I use it in a bottle like that is I won't cross-contaminate anything. I can just take a drop it on there, and you'll never contaminate your product. Because what a lot of people will do, they'll take the bottle and they need more on it, so they'll go like this. And what you did is you just took all your dirt and you stuck it in your clean container. That's why I like using the Ripper eye drop. As you can see, we got all that cleaned off pretty good. But yeah, that means a lot getting these gears clean. It's really as good as I can get it. Like I said, I put these in an ultrasonic cleaner and it cleans them out really good. With these, I can take my buzzer. I could buzz them clean. You got to hold your finger on them because you don't want to bend them. Or I use the green 3M scrubby pad, and I'll just clean them like that. Notice I'm keeping my finger on them so I'm not bending them. You want to get a nice polish on them. But yeah, you could use a buzzer. And do that to them too. All right. Now this area is very important to clean off. As you can see, it's nasty. It's got lines, dirt lines into it. So this is where we take the 3M scrubby pad. Start cleaning it. This will not hurt it, trust me. I did a test on one of these. I sat here and watched TV, and I took one of these and I just scrubbed it the whole time for a half hour, and it did no damage to the board at all. You can use like Brasso to clean these, or do not use sandpaper. No sandpaper. This is about as abrasive as I get. As you can see, it's got a good polish to it. Now, we'll take a little super lube. I'm going to slather it on there. So I want to coat it really good in the track area. Now, I'm going to wipe it completely off. What that did, it left a very small micro layer of lubricant on there that will protect the pad. That pad is now protected, and it's got a very light layer of lubricant on it. All right, now we're going to put this back together. No lubricant on this at all. It's plastic. Don't want to put lubricant on it because you'll swell it. And if it swells, it's garbage. It will expand and it will just bind the plastic into the metal. I'm old. I gotta get my eyes so I can see. All right. Now this, you look at it, it's kind of shaped like a house and it's got a point on the top. It's got the exact marking on that piece we just put in there, that gear. That has to line up perfectly. Now here's one of the tricks. We're going to tighten it up. Notice how I'm holding the screwdriver. And it's slipping on it. That's about as tight as I want to get it. We got good contact with the feet. They're doing their thing. I can feel I got a little movement in there. So that is good. As you notice, this is cracked. This is a parts part. All right. Now this, it's got a little bit of adjustment to it, not much. You can get it up and down a little bit. I need that little bit of gap that's right in there. I need a little bit of that. You get no gap, it gets too tight and it will bind. So I want a little bit, like about right there. That was the other issue with Chicago coin, adjustment on this. Nobody else had adjustment. Chicago coin's the only one that did. I don't understand why. And does anybody know what happened to Chicago coin? They turned into Stern. Stern bought Chicago coin. So if you look at the very early Stern score units, same thing, except for they went to a plug-in, like a Molex connector on them. But Chicago coin turned into Stern. All right, let's get that on there. See, now I'm screwed up already. I'm gonna have to get my camera out. I'm gonna guess it. Yeah. Let's look at the camera. See, you think you're doing it right. Yep, I got it right. That's why I say take pictures. I just took this apart right in front of you and I couldn't remember how it went together. Great movement. What I'm doing is I'm cleaning the rust off of it. The rust is going to drag on the plastic. You can either put new ones of these on or clean your old ones. I just rub them against 3M paper. The 3M scrubby pad, I call it. Now we'll clean the rust off. Now this is a nub that's right on here. And then there's a groove right in here that fits with that. Right into there like that. Put our 3 screws in. These again, I do the same thing with the screwdriver. Don't want to over tighten these. Put them in. Hold the screwdriver loosely and then let it pop off the screw. That's it. Now we have a fully working Chicago coin stepper for the score reel. As you can see before, this thing was sticky. It didn't do what it was going to do. But the trick is a lot of people will tighten this up too much. They want to tighten it until it stops. And then it just starts binding it even more. Same with these screws, they want to adjust it too close. You don't want that. Loosen it back up and then just tighten it down. It'll stop. That's nice and loose. Does what it needs to do. That's a Chicago coin square reel, totally rebuilt, except for the coil sleeve we kind of fudged on that one. I didn't know it would be stuck in there. That's pretty cool, wasn't it? We got time for one more? Okay, do we want to do the really super hard Gottlieb one? Or do we want to do the really easy Williams one? Which one do you guys want to do?
Gottlieb.
Okay.
I got some Gottlieb score reels I need to clean too, so this is great.
Okay, like I said, Gottlieb made these because they do not want anybody to work on their machines ever. They're the most over-engineered score reels that I don't understand why, but we'll get to it. All right. Same thing. What do we do? Pictures. You want your pictures? Normally with Gottlieb, you have to remove the wires off the coil. You have to desolder them. I don't have a soldering iron here, so this is a parts machine. So we just desoldered them. Now we got to get these three off. You got your clip, a washer, 2 screws here. Now you're going to understand why I say these things are very over-engineered for what they need to do. Remember on the Chicago coin how we had the plate here? Gottlieb puts theirs there. With this unit, I got to get that piece back on there. Picture time. These ones, you totally need your camera. You're not putting them back together without one. Unless you just did 50 at one time. As you can see, there's even more mechanics here. Try to get it from all angles if you can. Yeah, it's just so over-engineered, it's crazy. Another thing about Gottlieb, they love flathead screws. Everything Gottlieb is a flathead screw. They're just a pain because your screwdriver slips off them. They don't like to behave. They're not fun, but they need to be rebuilt. As you can see, all the steps I need to do just to get to the coil. There we go. And there we got a Gottlieb score reel disassembled. Same thing with the data cleanup. It's all old grease right here. Somebody decided it's stuck at one time. Let's throw some grease on it. Make it work again. Well, that worked short, for a short period of time. And then that grease gets all hard and it makes it stick again. These are, I'm saying pro level on rebuilding. These are not fun. It's just, like I said, Gottlieb did not want people touching their machines. But I would think if NASA would have ordered a pinball machine from Gottlieb, this is how it would have been built. Very, very, very overbuilt. And again, if you've got an ultrasonic cleaner, this does wonders for cleaning these parts.
Mark, what's the type of liquid you use in your ultrasonic?
Ultrasound, I use, I can't even remember. It's 20 ounces of, it's a purple cleaner, something HD. I get it at Home Depot. Purple, it's purple. It's a
Look for the purple
cleaner.
stuff.
It's it says HD on it. I probably got a picture on my phone. Albums, pinball parts. Pinball stuff. Simple Green Pro HD Heavy Duty Cleaner. That's what I use. 20 ounces of that to 1 gallon of water. I use old milk jug. I put in the 20 ounces in there and I fill it with water. All right. Coil sleeve. Hey, look at that. It comes out perfectly. And again, Gottlieb uses a smaller sleeve. There we go. We got one. New coil sleeve. What I do like about Gottlieb, these coil stops are replaceable. You just unbolt it. You can bolt it on your coil stop and you're done. That's one thing I did love about Gottlieb. Now assembling these, they're just as hard to reassemble as take apart. These are not for the faint of heart on rebuilding. So they go in together in such a layer. All right. Let's get that like that. That like that. Now we have to get this in there, but we have to get this back finagled underneath here with having this in the way. It's got to be all just right. There we go. This plunger, it slides down only one way into there, like that. But then you got to finagle all this stuff into there. Wow, that was easy. No, it wasn't. It was actually very hard. It's just, I've done these a couple times. I should say more than a couple times. But yeah, that's not a fun part.
So Gottlieb was making up to 200 games a day.
200 games a day.
So some people had to, so there was 16 and 3,200 meals a day they had to do.
Imagine that. You're sitting at Gottlieb and you got to do 3,200 of these a day. Wow. And you can see how I'm struggling on one. They must have had an army of people building these at one time. And that was my friend John. He has helped me out a lot with EMs, questions, everything. So yeah, if you want to check out Air Aces on YouTube, along with Mark's Basement Arcade. John's a good friend I met through the hobby. And like I said, he's helped me out a lot with questions and stuff. Now this plate, it will slide back and forth. You want it all the way to the back, because we want to lock that coil in the spot. All right. That's all good. I'm going to use the buzzer on these. What that does, it cleans and highly polishes your contact. As you can see all the dirt that we've got so far. I also do a very detailed rebuilding these on Mark's Basement Arcade, along with tons of other EM rebuilding. I usually will start on the head on the game and work my way completely through the machine and rebuild every mech that's in the machine. All right, we got that there. Now here's a trick with these. This has this gear here, only on one side. That has to line up with that perfectly. In order for this machine to do what it needs to do. As soon as I let it go, it's going to come out anyways. Let's get the spring on here. Stay. Basically just cleaning the rust off the spring as much as I can. Now, if I'm lucky, that will stay. Remember, your cousin's toothbrush works great for this. I want to get all the grease out of here, because that's going to ride on those teeth. I normally use Q-tips. I like the Up and Up brand Q-tips from Target with the plastic, not the cardboard stick. The plastic one is forgiving and you can bend it really easy. If you get the cardboard stick, those tend to break. All right, that's nice and clean. Now the same thing here. You just need the circle area cleaned here. Yeah, nice and clean. Same thing, super lube. Lather it on. Buff it off. Again, that leaves a nice micro coating on there. Now there's two contacts on here we got to clean off. Let me get a new towel. You thought this was going to be easy. This is hard compared to the Chicago coin. That one was easy. These are a lot harder.
I hate Gottlieb's.
I know. You can see how overcomplicated this is. Just doing a small little task. Compared to this, look how simple that is. They both do the exact same thing. See how it's got a little board here? This has a giant board that folds over the top and makes it a big score reel sandwich. It's overcomplicated. Makes you wonder why Gottlieb isn't here today. Which is sad. Gottlieb made great machines. It's just, they really overcomplicated everything. I love Gottlieb machines, but they really, really overcomplicated what they needed to do. And again, hold your finger on them so you don't bend them out of whack. Okay, here's the big trick. Getting all this to mesh back together. But I'm going to show you something. I don't know if you can see it. On the top of the reel here, there's the snub right here. That has to line up with this little nub that's on this piece. That's how it keeps in time. This doesn't matter how I drop it back on there. However, these two got to line back up perfect. Like that. We'll take our score reel sandwich. Did I miss any pieces? Yeah, there's one right there. That plastic acts as a bearing. Put your screws back in.
Mark, when you're putting the actual score reel in with the numbers, does the numbers have to be in a certain orientation or anything like that?
No, it matters on that little metal piece I put on there. That is what lets the machine know where the numbers are going to line up, because that will line up with the disc here. The pinball machine's kind of stupid if you think of it. It doesn't care where the numbers are. It cares about 0, 9, and 8, or 1. I can't remember. Yeah, and this works for the score replay and bonus and the match. But yeah, the machine doesn't care where anything is except for 3 numbers. And then the machine will pulse to get everything to click correctly.
Okay.
Once it reaches the mark that's on the numbers, reading it off the plate here, it knows it's at 0 or 1 or 9. I can't remember exactly which makes the lift is 0. But now we should have, oh, we are a little sticky at this way. There we go. It just had to mesh back together. And I'm not slapping it as hard as the coil will. we go. I gotta adjust these yet. These switches here tell where the reel is. See, we're on 0, and those went down like that. Now it told the machine it's on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It should change. Here we go. It changed on 9, and at 0, it will do another thing. Now I need to get out my extra eyes. See what we're adjusted at. They're actually really good. No, they're not. Where are they? Yeah, they're off yet. They were open. Now we're closed. I have a cheater on my phone. Talley. Tells you where the switches are supposed to be. Open, closed. So we're on, I don't know what these are out of, so we're gonna have to figure it out. On one we're closed. Open. Yeah, they're good. They're working as they should. And then now you'd have to solder your coils wires back on and then slip it back into the machine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark, for that demonstration. It's going to help us all clean our games.
Yeah. These reels are also very hard to clean the plastic. Sometimes if you rub them, you'll take the ink right off of them. These are really hard to clean. The Chicago coin, as you can see, these are shiny. These ones you can polish really good and get them to look brand new again. Oh, this is the Chicago coin. These will polish really good. Williams will polish really good. The Gottlieb is like stamped on with ink, and if you rub it, you can actually take the numbers right off. So I usually try to clean them as good as I can, kind of like just buff them with a dry towel. I've heard of people using rubbing bread on them to clean them. That's one thing I've always wanted to try, but I never did. I just been having pretty good luck with like a microfiber or a towel like this. And you can see just in that little bit, I got some good dirt off of them. But yeah, it looks better than 2 and 3. They're cleaner now. So yeah, that's it. And these Williams, these are like butter to do. It's sticky, but I think it was better for me to show you the 2 hard ones. These are so easy. I could have probably do this with my eyes closed almost. Almost. I don't want to put money on that, but yeah, I think I could. But yeah, I have tutorials on Mark's Basement Arcade, step by step on how to completely do these perfectly, to readjust them, reset them back up, completely refurbish your game, get it back up and going. all that fun stuff. I think, yeah, I think we're about done.
Yeah. Great
This will take
presentation.
another half hour to do another one, so.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you for
We
having
appreciate it. And everyone, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back on to do a chatting with the home brewers that are here today, all the custom games. On the other side of our booth, you can buy the A3 pillar. There's a bunch of custom-made pinball and arcade games there, so definitely go check them out. And then we're going to bring some of the creators on the stage to discuss what it's like making their games. So thank you all so much. Have fun.